Let's see. Yeah, I think we'll use Arca Ladona. I don't know what else I can unlock without. Oh, I guess we have a few more stages. Yeah, we need to do the teeny bridge at some point. You've seen the Sony news? Yes, I've seen the Sony news, and it's very annoying. It's a little annoying for me, but I don't think it annoys me as much as it annoys other people. Since I am a, what do you call it? I kind of use her. Since I'm mostly digital, I don't think it bothers me as much, but it still bothers me if that makes any sense. Because I still buy the occasional physical game, especially for Switch, if it's like a remaster or re-release or like, yeah, stuff like that. Like whenever the Chrono Cross collection came out, and the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters, and Bait and Kaitos, like all of those things, I bought physical versions of those for Switch immediately. Still looking for Final Fantasy Tactics. They only made like a very small run of them in Japan, but apparently like you can just get it on Amazon America. It's easy enough, so I might have to bite the bullet and pay the extra money for that at some point. Actually, I don't know what the exact statement is that Sony put out, so let me pull that up. Let's look at it. Yeah, let's look at it. Let's mute the game audio. The game's a little loud. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So we have the PlayStation blog pulled up, and this was the statement they put out. I guess today's technically like midnight, I guess, for Japan time. So physical disc production is ending in January 2028 for new games releasing on the PlayStation consoles. So this means, yeah, they're done making disc-based games. So let's read the whole thing, or most of the whole thing. In response to shifting trends in consumer preferences, new games will be released on the PlayStation Store and retailers in digital formats only. As consumers' preferences in the broader entertainment industry continue to shift away from physical discs to digital, physical game disc production for all new games releasing on PlayStation consoles will be discontinued starting January 2028. Following this date, new games will be available on PlayStation Store and at retailers in digital formats only. This transition has no impact on games already released or that will be releasing prior to January 2028 in disc format. That's crazy. This is the natural direction for Sony Entertainment interactive entertainment to adapt to consumer trends and the general preferences for digital media, significantly outpacing physical discs. Sure. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today. Okay. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation. This is very funny. This is like corporate word slop right here. We'll continue to prioritize our resources to drive innovation in how players can access games and provide choices as to where players prefer to purchase new games. Apparently not. Whether that's at retailers or on the PlayStation Store, we remain committed to delivering world-class gaming experiences to our fans, and we thank you for your continued support. So, I have some thoughts on this. Like I said, I'm an all-digital gamer for the most part. If I really love a game, and it's a game I know I love, for a series I love, especially for those classic re-releases that I grew up with, so for like PlayStation 1, some PlayStation 2 games, and like remasters and reimagining of old games that I really love, but not necessarily full-blown remakes. Those tend to be games that I try to buy physically for a Switch and whatnot, because I like having them on the go, and I like having a physical version of it sitting on my shelf, because it feels equally nostalgic, but it also just kind of, it feels proper to look over and see Suikoden 1 and 2 remaster on my shelf because it's a classic game that I enjoyed, or the one that I appreciate, because I never finished Suikoden 2. I gotta do that sometime in my life. But like, I have my Bait and Kaitos copies on full display because I love that game and it's just one of my favorites. And I decided to show that by buying it digitally on Switch and saying, man, I really love Bait and Kaitos. Let me further show my fandom and enjoyment of this series and appreciation of it by buying a physical copy as well. So I went out to the game store and I got a physical cartridge of Bait and Kaitos, and I didn't even open it. It's just sitting on my shelf. And I'm even going to get the Steam version at some point when I stop being lazy and get through my backlog a little bit. But all of those things aside, like, I'm still a digital gamer. That the physical games that I buy are more for novelty, and I realize I'm kind of an enthusiast for certain game franchises, and that's why I buy physical copies of games I already own or games that I already have access to. But there's something about having the physical thing in your house, in your space, that feels good. Like, I have a display of Pokemon, the classic Pokemon games, like the 3DS versions of it, because I love playing my 3DS. And I went to a big camera out in the middle of nowhere, like a year or two after the 3DS was discontinued, and I said, you know what? They have at least one of every one of these Pokemon digital re-release, like, physical cases that they put out with it just to, like, celebrate the games. I'm gonna buy one of all of those. And the lady at the store looked at me like I was crazy. She's like, why are you buying one of all of these? Just like, I just want it. And I spent, like, how much money was that? I don't know, it's like 6 games, and I think they're all like 3,000 yen? Whatever. Either way, I spent that money, and those aren't even open. Pokemon Silver is open because I bought that first. And I opened it and I used it. But the rest of them aren't open. And they just sit on the shelf, and they will continue to sit on the shelf. And I believe they come with, like, the manual, like, classic manuals. It's a great little package. I love it. But it serves no purpose other than to sit on the shelf and be an homage to my fandom. And that's a part of being a digital gamer that exists that I don't think Sony appreciates. And I don't think a lot of game companies appreciate it. Like, some game companies do release, like, physical goods with their digital versions. Like, you can get, I think Capcom does, for their collector's editions for, like, Resident Evil, you can get, like, the statue and, like, the mansion map or whatever. And it also comes with, like, a digital copy of the game, but you get all the physical stuff shipped to your house. And it's like, that's a really good way to do it. But I feel like the incentive for stuff like that is going to go away with this. But more on topic, not just like my own experiences with being digital, but also buying physical for collector's purposes. Like it says, as consumer preferences in the broader entertainment industry shift away from physical, it makes sense that they're going more digital. Because year on year, if you look at the stats, and this has been reported by officially by PlayStation, by all kinds of gaming news outlets, so on and so forth, the industry has been moving away faster and faster away from physical media. But that doesn't mean there isn't a space for it. Especially in gaming enthusiast circles, there's plenty of people who buy physical games mostly just to collect them, just to have them in their house, even if they don't necessarily play physical games. They might prefer digital games, or they might not even write off digital games entirely, but their main purpose in gaming is going to a game store or getting a game shipped to them, and they like opening the package and all that stuff. It's a part of the experience, and it's a big part of the experience for a lot of people. But as a whole, yes, the industry, entertainment-wise, has been moving away from physical media for quite a while now. Movies did it, music did it years and years ago, 2 decades ago. And yeah, it just makes sense. And gaming was always moving towards that direction. I think gaming was one of the first big adopters of digital downloads and digital versions of games, and I don't think many people had too much of an issue with physical and digital existing side by side. So this is a big deal though, because this is Sony calling the shot a little earlier than people assumed. I think anyone who follows the video game industry, I think the increasingly hostile nature towards physical that Sony has been putting out there, just in some of their statements and whatnot, and like how they talk about physical shops and retailers, and how they're proceeding with like these small incremental changes every once in a while to their services like PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Network and all that stuff. We've seen them being poising themselves to take over the marketplace more and more and more. They want the whole pie, not a slice of the pie. Even though they had the vast majority, they want their last 20% or whatever it is. So this is them calling the shot early. I think a lot of people were assuming the PlayStation 6, whenever that comes out, whether it comes out at the tail end of next year, which has been the rumor for a while, which I doubt will happen, just considering the current marketplace is just like, it would be suicide to launch a console at $1,000, but who knows? But yeah, I think we were assuming that maybe in the PlayStation 6 generation they would just do digital, or they would have a digital only version similar to how they do the PlayStation 5, and then they would pull the plug on physical either halfway through that generation or at the end of that generation. That's kind of what I was assuming, and I think that's what a lot of people were assuming, that the 6 would be the last physical console, or console with like a physical disc. Excuse me. Just because Xbox was moving away from it, and it's kind of felt like Sony was like the outlier, because they've continuously called out physical gaming specifically, but they've also once again been moving away from it, being a little hostile towards it. So but yeah, this is also a bit interesting, this little statement about it. New games will be available for the PlayStation Store and retailers in digital formats only. So PlayStation Store means nothing's going to change in that space. You're still going to be able to jump on your PlayStation or on the website and download your game. But at retailers, that's going to be interesting, because at current, they only sell the PlayStation Plus cards that just top off your account with money. So now I'm wondering, are they going to sell like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare card that gives you access to the game? Are they going to do this for every game? Because that's thousands of games. They're not going to make thousands of uniquely designed cards just for this, right? Are you going to go to a store and maybe a store will have display tags of like all of the games, and you take the tag up to the retailer, they scan it, you pay your money, and they give you a code, and that's the code you enter when you go home? Like, is that the future? Because it feels like a lot of stuff will be missing in the heart of going to a store, browsing games, and making a decision. If that is indeed part of your routine, I regularly go to brick and mortar stores to buy like hobby goods like Gunpla, and just to look at like cameras or watches, or like see the new TVs. And I also, obviously, as a gamer, I look and browse at the gaming sections just to see what's on the shelf. Like, what's on the shelf? How much is it going for? Is this something I might be interested in? There are a couple of times I've seen games where I'm like, oh, that looks cool, I'm gonna check that out when I go home. That's not going to exist anymore, and I think that's going to be a sad thing. But yeah, just thinking about how Xbox has changed here in Japan, specifically how they've never been a market leader in Japan. They've always been a distant third, even fourth if you count PC, which I kind of think you should. Xbox has literally they always had their like small section, but it was always like a shelf or two of stuff. But whenever the current generation started, the Xbox Series X, Series X, when the Series X started, Microsoft actually had like quite a bit of headroom for growth. Like, lots of people couldn't get a PlayStation 5 So they were just like, oh, I'm going to need an Xbox, I'm going to get Game Pass, and I'm going to be set for this generation. And when Microsoft was pushing Game Pass so hard, retailers here in Japan stopped stocking the shelves with Xbox branded stuff beyond the controllers and the consoles of, like, if they had them themselves. And that's it. Like, you look at Xbox sections now, it's literally just game cards for topping off your account and controllers, and that's it. Because they've given retailers nothing to put on the shelves, so why would retailers give them shelf space? So I'm wondering if that's what's going to happen to Sony. I would imagine they're going to, like it says, they're going to be available at retailers in digital formats. So Sony's still going to have a presence, but I'm just so curious as to what that presence is going to look like and what their shelf size is going to be. Because I think about the local retail store I go to. It's a Big Camera in Nagoya. Earlier last year, during the Switch 2's like release, they reformatted their gaming section to have a massive Nintendo section. It's just like a giant wall display of Nintendo stuff. Like, most of the gaming stuff in the store is Nintendo based. There's also this giant wall that just says Nintendo. It has a huge screen. It has like all the consoles and a bunch of Nintendo plushies. And then there's just like this like aisle in between, and then it's Sony, just like all white. So like the divide is real, and like one of them is very sterile and one of them is very fun. So I'm wondering what the Sony section is going to look like when the competition is going to be that fierce. That's where my head's going. But like I said, I don't think this is a good thing. Like I said, I don't think this is a good thing for gaming as a whole, because removing such a key component of the gaming experience like this is just, it kind of feels wrong. It feels too soon. It feels unwanted. And it feels like a decision that's being made by someone who is in a position to continue to do this for no extra cost to themselves, really. And that's the other thing, like, Nintendo somehow being the example of how to do this right, which is crazy because I'm not anti-Nintendo, but I'm very anti their policies. Nintendo's newest policy is that digital games are cheaper than physical games, and that's kind of what people have always wanted out of this situation. Like, as a digital gamer, I always lament the fact that I don't buy physical versions of games, even though they are significantly cheaper. Like, when PlayStation would have sales, I would see a game go on sale for like $29.99, then look at the retail store and see it for $9.99. I'm just like, man, I'm missing out. I feel like I'm getting scammed here. And Sony would never price match that. They would never match that, not in that current sale and not in the subsequent sale. They would never do it. And now that Nintendo has decided, okay, new games, if you buy them digitally, are like 1,000 yen, $10 cheaper than their physical versions. It's a physical version tax for people who want to have a physical version because there's less and less of them. But it's like, okay, if you want it, here is your essentially a collector's edition thing, almost. It feels like Sony isn't going to do that. Like, Sony has made profit off PlayStation year on year. They are not going to discount their games just because they're digital. GTA 6 is going to be $80, right? GTA 6 is going to be $80 because Rockstar wants it to be $80, or Take-Two wants it to be $80. The Pie in the Sky Bloodborne remake is not going to be like $70 on digital and then $60 physical. Or, yeah, they're not going to do that. Or the vice versa, that. They're both going to be the same price, and they're both going to be high. And they're never going to go on sale. Like, we know that's exactly what's going to happen, because they're not going to be the good guy in this situation. Because they haven't been in the past. And if they do come out and say, like, digital versions will be cheaper, following market trends, I think this news would go over significantly better. But until that happens, I don't believe it. I'm not holding my breath for that happening. So it also says they'll continue to provide choices as to where people can buy their new games. It very specifically says new games. So this also is the other part of it, is that it's going to kill the used game market, which sucks, because if a game is out of rotation, it's just like not being produced very much. Like I always mentioned, the Final Fantasy Tactics situation here in Japan, the remastered version is basically unavailable on Switch. You can only get the PlayStation versions and the Switch 2 version, but I don't have a Switch 2. My PlayStation 5 is digital. I need the physical version of the Switch version if I want to buy that game. Unless I buy it on PC, which I have, so. But it says it's supposed to provide choice for where people can buy their games, and I think this obviously takes choice away, so it's very interesting that they say this. But yeah, I think it's a crazy situation that they're calling the shot so early. I thought we would at least get until 2030, and if, like I said, even as someone who's not a physical gamer, a physical disc buying gamer, it feels like it affects me, even though it doesn't. Anyway, but there's also a little more extra news to this. The PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita stores are going to be shutting down, finally, officially. So, a lot of people forget. Changes start this year in select markets, followed by global changes in 2027. A lot of people forget, this is the second time they've announced this. The PlayStation 3 store and the PlayStation Vita store were supposed to shut down like 5 years ago, and they didn't, because the outcry about this was so big that Sony delayed this shutdown, and they basically gave people even more time to basically buy any games they wanted on these platforms digitally before they shut these things down. And as a, what do you call it, as a understanding of how like marketplaces work and hardware and software works at a very surface level, I get it. Having a 20-year store sitting there, like having a store that has 20-year-old infrastructure where you're able to make purchases and have your account data saved into it, is like, it's a ticking time bomb. Sony knows it. Sony's been hacked multiple times. Sometimes when their services, especially on PlayStation 3, have gone down for weeks at a time. Not even days. We're talking weeks, if anyone remembers that. Jeez, I am parched. So yeah, they've had their systems hacked many times, so having a vulnerable system, or a potentially vulnerable system like this just sitting there, is a big reason why Nintendo shut their old services down, why Xbox has shut theirs down, and why Sony is shutting theirs down as well. It makes sense on a surface level, like I get it. It's a software vulnerability in some capacity, I'm sure. But yeah, this news doesn't really bother me as much because of that understanding. And like, you had 20 years to buy your PlayStation 3 network games. You've had 15 for your Vita. I think is Vita like 15 or is it 10? It feels like 10, but I think it's 15. We've had time. But that doesn't mean that this doesn't suck, because there is a lot of content that is stuck on the PlayStation 3 store and the PlayStation Vita store that is only available on these platforms. And of course, not everything is available, because the full switch to digital happened mid PlayStation 3 generation, closer to the end of it, honestly. But there's so much stuff, like, just off the top of my head, like the fighting games, Third Strike Online Edition, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, there's a Darkstalkers collection, like all of these things that are just like of that era that are stuck there. Thankfully, some of these have been re-released over time, but there's plenty of stuff that is still just like locked over there. I think about Hardcore Uprising, the Contra game, the anime Contra game made by ArcSys. That never got ported to anything else. It's a very good game, and it's stuck on the PlayStation 3, and seemingly it's never coming out on anything else. So Yeah, it just sucks that when these marketplaces shut down, they take so much stuff with them. But yeah, it says this will happen. This will happen in 2027. So in 2 months? No, next month. Holy shoot! Next month in Latin America, basically, it's going to be shutting down there in all starting in August and moving throughout Latin America and some Middle Eastern countries throughout 2026. And then in all other countries, the PlayStation 3 and Vita stores will close this time next year. So the full shutdown will be next year. So yeah, if you're interested in any of these PlayStation 3 games, any of these PlayStation Vita games, I still have my PlayStation Vita over there. I still have a PlayStation 3 at my parents' house. I keep asking my mom to send me my PlayStation 3. She hasn't done it. I've been asking for like 3 years. Not because of this news, it's because I want to play freaking Ridge Racer 7. I have it on emulator at this point, but I'm just like, which is another topic here. Yeah. I want to have access to the games that have not gotten remastered. Like I think about Umbrella Chronicles and all of that stuff that got PlayStation 3 versions that are just sitting there and they're seemingly not coming back. But yeah, it goes on to say it may be disappointing for people who hold these platforms hold a special place in our hearts, but yeah, it wasn't an easy decision, but it's one that was inevitable and it's one that had to happen eventually. So from what I understand about what happens when these platforms or these marketplaces shut down, you'll be able to download your games and your content as long as it's in your account and as long as that content isn't taken away because of copyright reasons or some other reasons, which is another aspect of it, because it says for the foreseeable future. It doesn't say for forever. It doesn't say for 20 years. It doesn't say for 10 years. It doesn't say for one more year after this. It says foreseeable future. How long that is ambiguous, and that is another problem I have with stuff like this, or that's my major problem with it. Will I get the urge to suddenly re-download Tekken 5 Dark Resurrection PlayStation 3 version? Probably not, but maybe someday in the future, if I decide to do a retrospective video on it, I would love to have access to it, of a game I spent $29.99 or something 20 years ago on, and it has no other versions of that specific version of Tekken 5. I probably want to play it someday. I would like to know that I have access to it, of something I spent my hard-earned money on. So yeah, foreseeable future is always annoying, but this is what Xbox has done, this is what Nintendo has done, this is what PlayStation is doing. You can still download your like 3DS stuff, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Nintendo is always an outlier, so you never know. But you'll be able to download this stuff for a certain amount of time. So, but the other side of that is, I don't know about Vita specifically, but I know PSP emulation is pretty solid. PlayStation 3 emulation has been skyrocketing in quality in the last year or two or so, I've been hearing. So if you have nostalgia for PlayStation 3 era games, but you don't have access to a PlayStation 3, because this news alone is going to make these two devices jump in price, because whenever they shut down Vita TV, they stopped manufacturing them. That thing spiked in price. As soon as they announced it, I bought one, so it's sitting over there as well. It's pretty great. Your custom firmware Vita also is a custom firmware PlayStation TV. It's pretty sweet. But yeah, emulation is... I'm a big fan of emulation personally, because as someone who grew up with PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, who doesn't have access to their entire library because I live in a different country than the country I grew up in with those consoles, occasionally I get nostalgia and I want to play my PlayStation 1 games, because I'm still a huge PlayStation 1 gamer. Like 30 years later, I still jump in on like RPGs like Legend of Volgaia, something I'm playing on my Vita. or I plan to start playing on my Vita again soon, because it'll be like the 4th time I've played that game, but I love it. And it's not available on PlayStation 5, it's not available on a PC version. That studio probably doesn't exist anymore. So the only way I have access to it now is when I visit my parents in America, or I get an emulated copy. Like, that's the only access I have of it now, unless I buy like a Japanese version. It's like, I played it in English, I want to play it in English again. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough ranting about this. I understand the Vita and PS3 shutdown, network shutdown, or marketplace shutdown. I don't understand the physical disc thing too much. Like, I get it, I don't like it, but yeah. I will say though, I've already started weaning myself off of PlayStation 5. Oh Jesus, got PlayStation 3 on the brain. I've already started weaning myself off the PlayStation ecosystem because of how the PSN price increases kept going up, and I got priced out of it. Just full stop, I got priced out of the North American marketplace. So I jumped over to the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 5 Japanese marketplace because I live in Japan, and it was too expensive to be on the North American store anymore because the Japanese yen is just more and more and more every day. My whole 12 years of PlayStation Plus purchases are on my North American account. I have 1 year of purchases and like a handful of games that I purchased on the Japanese side. My collection of digital games is split already, and seeing that they are willing to just cut out a whole fragment of their marketplace, even if it's not the biggest, even if it's a increasingly small one, but one that kind of affects multiple things, seeing that they just kind of like, whatever, let's just do it, is another reason why my PlayStation 5 has just been sitting there for like the last year, as I've increasingly tried to get most of my library on Steam and rebuying games that I have on PlayStation 5 on Steam instead, because I do want to play them again, like Street Fighter 5, like Resident Evil 4, like I bought them on PlayStation, I'm buying them again on Steam when they're cheap, to wean myself out of that ecosystem that consistently feels like the gates are getting higher and higher and higher around me, but they're not, but the area around inside the gates isn't getting bigger or better. It's not, yeah, the quality of the services isn't changing, but the barriers are, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I think that's enough ranting about this. Yeah. I will say, I think the next game that had my interest for Sony was Wolverine. This immediately made me think, like, I might skip Wolverine, and I don't think I'm going to be the only person who thinks this way. I think this is one of those things that maybe wakes a lot of people up and makes them say, oh, that's right. This is kind of a walled garden situation, so if you're like me and you have access to a PC, even though I have like a very beginner level PC, the fact that I have access to it is enough to make me pump the brakes on PlayStation purchases. So I would imagine for people who are also in a similar situation, whether they have an Xbox or a Switch or a PC, this is one of those things that just makes you say, yeah, maybe I can move on to a different ecosystem. Maybe I can just buy my game somewhere else. Maybe I can skip Wolverine. Maybe. Oh, the game was still running. Oops.